report. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our daily class on the Gate of Trust. And it is fabulous to be here with everybody this morning. We're going to continue from where we left off, which is in our books, Gate of Trust, the new edition from Kahosan Chayenu, which can be bought from every worthwhile Jewish bookstore near you. And if they don't have it yet, they better quickly get it in order to prove their worth. Page 24, we're in a section now that talks about financial satisfaction. Money, ladies and gentlemen, money. Yesterday I quoted my grandfather who used to say, money isn't everything. Health and happiness is at least 2%. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, much of human stress comes from financial causes. Much of human stress has got to do with finance, money, finances. And over here, the author of Gates of Trust, Rabbeinu Bachya, in Shara B'tochen, helps us adopt the proper attitude of trust in Hashem, which allows us to live with much more equanimity and much less stress. So let's read on page 25. Among the advantages of bitochen, faith, trust, with regard to Torah observance, is that a person who places his trust in God will utilize his finances correctly. This applies both to rich and poor people who have bitochen. For if he has money, he will hurry to fulfill his obligations to God, such as buying kosher tefillin, tzitzis, extra food for the Sabbath meals, and the like. Those are all examples chosen by the translator. If you look at the bottom of the page where it says commentary, obligations to God, additionally will enhance his performance of commandments, hidur mitzvah, due to his financial ability, meaning he will spend well on doing mitzvahs. So again, back to the beginning of the paragraph. For if he has money, he will hurry to fulfill his obligations to God, as well as fulfilling his obligations to other people. I skipped the commentary, such as fulfilling the commandments of charity, giving out loans to those in need, and so on. He will do so willingly and generously. Somebody who has trust in Hashem will use their money in the right way. In other words, he's not going to start hoarding cash when it's more appropriate to be spending it on mitzvahs or giving it away. The other day I mentioned the story about that billionaire, I forgot his name this second, it skipped my mind this morning, about whom the Rebbe spoke, that absolutely wealthy man, that billionaire who was hoarding his money, and he couldn't live, he became a recluse out of absolute fear of what would happen with his money. But somebody who trusts in Hashem doesn't have to worry about that. They'll use their money appropriately and they don't hoard. So that is for somebody who's wealthy, how having trust in Hashem helps them live a much healthier life with their money. And if he does not have any money, what about a person who has no money? Well, having trust in Hashem will also help this person, because he will pay attention to the fact that the lack of money is actually a kindness from God upon him. How so? And now we're going to read one of the most interesting texts. In America, we're taught how money improves your life. Now Rabbeinu Bachya is going to explain to us how actually you're better off not having any money. The benefits of not having money. This is not something we hear a lot about in our society. The benefits of not having money. It's a kindness from Hashem that you don't have any money. How so? This is because as a result of lacking money, he has been relieved of the obligation to God and to other people, which would have been incumbent upon him due to his money. Having money is a massive responsibility. Having money is a massive spiritual responsibility. You have a responsibility to God and you have responsibility to other people. It's one heck of a responsibility. And so not having money means that you don't have that kind of responsibility in your life. Look at the commentary, bottom of page 26. It says, which would have been incumbent upon him due to his money. Were he be wealthy, he might not live up to his obligation and consequently might be punished. Having money and not using it appropriately is something that you have to give an accounting for to Hashem. Now that he has no money, he's free of this responsibility and will surely not be punished for failing in this obligation. So the first advantage of not having any money is that you don't have the responsibility to use your money in the right way, which is a tremendous responsibility. It's not a small thing.
That's like saying if you don't have parents, you're not obligated in honoring your parents. And so you're exempted from that tremendous responsibility. And I dare say that most of us would not come to that conclusion.
Good point. Good point. Good point. So, firstly, it's a good point. That's the first point, my first comment. Good point. Secondly, I think it's a lot worse off. It's a lot worse to lose your parents than to lose your money.
I wasn't comparing the two in degree. I was comparing the logic behind it.
I understand, but I think degree is important over here. But thirdly, in other words, secondly, degree is very important. I think, yeah, of course, the logic holds, but but of course, degree is a massive thing over here. It's a lot harder to lose a parent than to lose money. And thirdly, I'm going to go the other way on this thing, which is, yes, this tells us what an incredible responsibility it is to honor one's parents. In other words, what Rabbeinu Bechaya here is highlighting is that with privilege comes responsibility.
Right.
With privilege comes responsibility. And whatever, whether it's health, whether it's parents, whether it's whatever we're blessed with, we have to use in the right way. And it's not just a privilege to be blessed with resources, it's also a tremendous responsibility. So the responsibility of honoring one's parents is a tremendous responsibility. And we shouldn't take for granted the blessings we have, and we have to live up to the blessings that we have and with the responsibilities that come with them. So in a situation where a person loses their money or doesn't have money, there is a hidden blessing in that don't think it's so easy to live up to that responsibility, is what he's saying. So it's a perspective that in many ways, if you ask me, between the lines over here, there's more a warning. I don't even say the warning's not the right word. There's more of a push here on the wealthy than there is a consolation to the poor. In other words, who's he addressing here? Is he addressing that the person without money and saying, don't worry, at least you don't have the obligation? My guess is most people without money are not going to, okay, a little bit of a comfort, but it's not going to really do it for them. But it's one heck of a reminder for those who are blessed with a little bit more about the responsibility to use our money in the right way. So when you're so I'm not sure which message he's trying to convey stronger, even though it's being written as a consolation to the one without money. You know, you could say, well, thank you very much. And we're going to address it, by the way. The next couple of paragraphs talk to this point very deeply, that there's a test of poverty and there's the test of wealth. And we're going to address both. But there is over here a very important admonition, or I don't know about an admonition, but a word of caution about using our resources in the best possible way, and not to take our blessings for granted, and to realize that with a blessing comes a responsibility. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, can I just another point of view that it's, I think, beneficial to be able to compare your life when you didn't have money and when you have money. For example, just on a personal level, when we came to America and we didn't have anything, and we were happy and excited and felt lucky. So then when you obtain some means for better living, you can appreciate that you don't need to have a lot of money to be happy, because we were happy without money. So it's easier to understand the situation, to share when you obtain the whatever means of living, better means of living, compared to when you didn't have money. You can be happy anyway. So it's kind of the matter of perspective. It's easier to do charity when you understand that it's not all you need for a happy life.
Interesting. Thank you, Svetlana. That's a very interesting perspective. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I heard yesterday, I'm listening to this series on the Bible by Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik, and he was talking about the Akedah yesterday, and it's interesting how it relates with parents and with trust. So he talked that the whole idea of the Akedah was that Yitzchak was entrusted to Abraham and Sarah to bring up, but Yitzchak belonged to God, as all children belong to God, and it's the parents' role to bring up that child. But when Abraham was tested, there was really no test in Abraham's mind, because the child really never belonged to him. The child was always God's. And I thought that's another reason for us also to honor our parents, because they are accepting this trust from Hashem in order to bring us up and to take care of us and nurture us and put us on the right path. It's not just, because you sometimes hear in today's world, you have to honor me because I gave birth to you. I think it's a lot deeper than that, and that was the lesson of the Akedah. I thought that was very, bitachon works both ways.
Very, very interesting. But I think also part of what he's saying over there is with blessing comes a responsibility.
Exactly.
And that's what Rabbi Bachia is saying over here. With the blessings, where if you are fortunate enough to have extra resources, extra financial resources, that brings a tremendous responsibility. There's a tremendous obligation. And we're going to talk more about this right now in the next few paragraphs. But with financial blessing comes a tremendous responsibility. And it's not an easy one. It's not easy. It's sometimes the financial responsibilities can be quite difficult. And having trust in Hashem enables a person, firstly, as we said before, having trust in Hashem enables a person to fulfill those obligations. It's not as hard to use your money in the right way when you have trust in Hashem. And also when you don't have money, you can turn around and you could say to yourself, well, at least, thank God I'm released from that obligation, because it's not an easy one. If you find it's easy, you probably either you really are fulfilling your obligation, or maybe you're not quite aware of what the obligation is. Lou, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear your answer to Judy. I know you said you're going to talk about that in a moment. I'm not yet satisfied with that answer, but you said you'd explain further. But I still have a question about something you mentioned yesterday. We were talking about, of course, trust in God and having enough to eat. And if you don't have money or resources, that God will provide. And you mentioned the believers, and then you made a comment about the concentration camp, and it caught my mind. The believers and the non-believers, they're both starved to death. They both were injured and hurt and beat and made into slaves and on and on and on. But you didn't really address the fact that those that believed, you said God would take care of them. I don't see that as the difference between the believers and non-believers. Could you just elucidate that a little bit?
Right. So that's a very, very, very important question. We did address it a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
I agree that we haven't yet fully addressed that question. I agree that we have not yet fully addressed that question. I'm going to hold it for now because I do know that the text is going to address this in much greater detail later on.
Fine.
And I think we can get there when we get there. For right now, let's just talk about day-to-day life and regular circumstances and regular pressures, and we'll save the Holocaust. Not that but we'll save.
It wasn't so much, Rob, it wasn't so much a Holocaust. It was just the contrast between the believers and non-believers. You said the believers, God will always take care, and you mentioned feeding them, and there was an example.
Okay, I understand. I'm gonna quickly say something we said yesterday. Okay, I'm gonna quickly say something. You know what? I'm not rehashing yesterday.
Okay,
I'm not rehashing yesterday. We spoke about this yesterday. I don't want to do it again today. We spoke about this. I'll put the recording up for you to listen to again, because I believe this question was addressed quite deeply yesterday, and it's probably worth listening to yesterday's recording again. I'll send that to you. But I do know that we have to come back to this conversation. Let's keep going. But over here, we're saying something new. It's a new idea. We've never heard this before. We just said something new. It's a big idea. Okay, we've just introduced a massive idea. Let's not forget this big idea. Let's not get distracted from this big idea. This is a big idea. Okay, that is, if you don't have a blessing, it means you don't have a responsibility. If you do have the blessing, you have the responsibility. Privilege comes with responsibility. This is a massive, massive, very important Jewish idea. Privilege comes with responsibility. It's not all fun and games to have lots of money. It's not all fun and games to have lots of money, because if you have lots of money, you have to give lots of tzedakah. So if you're not living in absolute poverty right now, the question one has to ask oneself at this point is, am I really giving enough tzedakah? Because it comes with a responsibility.
I think Branson is a very good example of that recently.
You're saying he is giving enough tzedakah, or he's not giving enough tzedakah?
It turns out that he does. He does do a lot. It isn't
honestly, I have no idea what his bank account is. I have no idea how much money he has, and I have no idea how much he gives away, and I honestly don't care. Because the only question that really is concerning me this morning is I'm thinking about myself, Levi Mendelow, and I'm thinking to myself, am I giving enough tzedakah? So I have to go after today's class and make a cheshbon hanefesh and a cheshbon of money. I got to do an accounting of what I have and what I'm giving away and make sure that I'm actually giving enough tzedakah. Because, and the question is, and if I don't have a lot to give away, I can say, thank God, because I don't know if I would truly stand the test of wealth. So the person who doesn't have a lot can take comfort in the fact that they don't have the challenges of being wealthy. The test of ashirus, the test of wealth. Let's look at you'll see a little bit more as we read over here, but it's a seriously important question, this. Another advantage of not being wealthy, he also has fewer worries about guarding his money and taking care of it. Having lots of money is very stressful. As has been said regarding one of the pious men, that he would say, may God save me from the scattering of the mind. They asked him, what is the scattering of the mind? In Hebrew, it's pizur hanefesh. What is pizur hanefesh, scattering of the mind? He replied, who are to have money at the port of each river, at the hearts of each city. A man who's wealthy often has possessions in many locations. As a result, his thoughts are scattered in different places, referred to as a scattering of the mind. This is what the sages of blessed memory meant when they said, the more the more possessions, the more worry. And when they also said, who is truly wealthy, and this is probably, when you talk about finances, one of the most important guidelines, because it's all relative, right? It's all relative. What's enough money? I believe they've done a lot of research on you when they ask people how much would be enough money for you. And research has shown that the average person, wherever they live, if you ask them how much enough money is, they'll tell you double what they currently earn. Whatever they currently earn. If you would double my salary, that would be enough, no matter what they earn.
Until the next time you're asked.
Until the next time they're asked, exactly. But who is truly wealthy? A person who's happy with what they have. They're satisfied, they're content. A person who trusts in God will receive all the benefits of the money. I mean to say the benefits of his livelihood. While the disturbing thoughts of a wealthy person and his constant worry will be withheld from him. As the wise man, King Solomon said, the sleep of the laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the satiety of the rich does not allow him to sleep. Now, I want to read a particular commentary for a second. We're going to end with this next commentary, which can be found on the bottom of page 26. The words that it's commenting on, it says he also has fewer worries about guarding his money and taking care of it. Meaning the poor person worries less than the wealthy person, which is fascinating. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating perspective. A poor person with trust in Hashem worries less than a wealthy man without trust. A wealthy man without trust worries more than a poor man with trust. And we all know that the worry about money is usually worse than the financial situation itself. But now comes a very interesting commentary, page 26 at the bottom, and this is from the Rebbe. He has the responsibility of taking care of his money. So although tzedakah is generally translated as charity, its literal translation is justice from the word tzedek. In fact, in the Torah, the term tzedakah is often used to refer to just and ethical behavior, meaning giving the appropriate amounts of tzedakah is the just and ethical thing to do. It's not voluntary, but it's an obligation. This distinction is telling because the concept of justice and charity are opposites. Charity implies that the giving person is kind. He is giving to a needy person that which he does not deserve. Just behavior, on the other hand, implies that it's the right and ethical thing to do. Not a kindness, it's an obligation. And the other person is not undeserving, but actually the ethical thing is to give them. And if you're not giving them, you're not just uncharitable, but you're unjust. The term tzedakah implies that giving to another is not something special. Rather, God deposits money with us so we can manage it for him. He gives us extra so that we can share with others. It is therefore the right and just thing to do.
I have
So
a
what we
question.
do- I'm sorry, yes?
So how does that work when you give tzedakah, you actually receive more back? I mean, how does that fit into that, you know?
One of the side benefits of tzedakah, as Elaine points out, is that when you do give tzedakah, Hashem blesses you with what you gave plus many times over. Is one of the blessings of tzedakah. You get it back, tremendous amount of times back. So Elaine says, well, if there's such a tremendous power in giving tzedakah that you get a lot more money back, so then obviously you'll give as much tzedakah as you can, because you've got a self-interest in giving tzedakah. Well, the answer to your question is you have to have a lot of trust in Hashem to do that. You have to have a lot of trust in Hashem to do that. That being said, it says about this, you should test me with this. The one mitzvah that Hashem says, test me and see what you get back, is the mitzvah of tzedakah. So anyone who's had a little bit of experience will know that it works. And actually, therefore, giving tzedakah gets easier. But the more we give, the more we get. The more we get, the more we can give.
But you,
And then Hashem trusts us with the money as well.
but you get back joy.
You get back joy and you get back financial blessings. You get back joy and you get back financial blessings. And if you don't believe it, try it, see what happens. But just keep your eyes open so that you realize that the blessing is actually coming from Hashem. Ladies and gentlemen, interesting conversation this morning. Yes, we haven't answered all the big questions of suffering. We will try to. We probably will never satisfactorily answer all those questions. But that being said, we have learned today a very interesting perspective of money, which is having financial blessing is a tremendous responsibility. If we have the blessing, we need to use it. And if you're not blessed with copious amounts of wealth, consider it a blessing as well, because it's one heck of a responsibility to have that, and one hell of a challenge not to become anxious about one's money. As the Mishnah says, and we quoted it today, the more you have, the more you have to worry about. So there are many sides to the blessing of wealth. Comes with its own challenges, and not having that blessing can also be a blessing, because you've got less to worry about and less obligation. Any last questions or comments before we call it a day?
What you said yesterday, I've repeated to myself, I can't imagine how many times it answers a lot of questions. You said yesterday, if you don't trust in God, there are no answers. If you trust in God, there are no questions. It's the most profound statement I've heard in a very long time.
Right. I believe the exact quote was, without faith, there are no answers. With faith, there are no questions.
It's extremely profound.
It's an extremely, 100%. I agree. Thank you for mentioning it again. It's a
Yeah.
quote I heard from my grandfather.
Yeah,
And yes, it is tremendously, tremendously profound. And yes, the one answer to lose question, which is hanging, one answer to lose question, which is hanging still, which is what about those people with faith that suffered, which was really Batya's question from a few days ago. And it comes up again today. One answer is that the person who has faith and trust in Hashem has a very different experience. In the same circumstances, they experience it very differently.
Yep.
They experience the same circumstances very differently. That's one answer. It's not the only answer. And as I said, this is something we're going to explore at great length. What we will say over here, what we will say later, I'm going to give you a clue to something we're going to talk about later, but one of the things we will say later is that with trust in Hashem, you open up opportunities that the cynic does not become open to. Cynicism often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Pessimism becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the trust in Hashem brings an optimism which also creates incredible opportunities for blessing. But again, I'm speaking quickly and cryptically, and this is something we're going to talk about at much greater length later on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, everybody, for joining this morning. We'll see you
Thank you.
tomorrow for further discussion.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.